With us.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Suckling on the teat of tech.
With Paul Brislen.
Yes, talking high tech, twitter.com/Paul Brislen. Morning, Paul.
Morning, how are you?
Morning. And of course, the big news that broke overnight, kind of a low tech story, really, when you think about it. News of the world, because it's old media, low tech.
Murdoch sacrificing 200 journalist lambs to the slaughter
because
to protect his heir apparent.
Because of what their previous colleagues had done.
That's right. It's a bit like discovering there was a body under your house and they arrest you for murder even though it's been there for quite some time.
Actually, lucky David Attenborough hasn't been arrested for that skull they found.
Send the Rozzers round. We'll get David on that one. It's a new way of doing it.
But anyway, this has all come about, of course, from phone hacking. But we know what's happened there. But let's look at it in the New Zealand context.
Yes.
Would that even be possible here in New Zealand?
Possible? Pish. We did it back in 2005.
What did we do?
And when we say we, I mean somebody else. I just reported on it
at
the time. But 2005, exactly the same hack, which is to pretend that you are that person, to dial in from a voice over IP account, and to what they did call spoof the number that you're calling from. Basically, you just change the number you're calling from to pretend you are that person that you're calling. And the phone systems of the day would recognise that you were dialing in and say, you're you. I know you. You can access your voicemail straight away.
And there's no password on the voicemail
no PIN
generally?
Number, no password or anything. Straight and away you went.
What sort of tech would you need, though, to do something like that?
You'd need a computer and a voice over IP account overseas.
Okay.
Both of which are free. It's called Skype these days.
Yeah.
But back in 2005, it was quite mysterious.
But how do you get Skype to pretend to be from a particular number?
I don't know, and I really don't want to know. But there are various bits of software out there, and a quick Googling around this morning, I found all kinds of different apps you can download to let you spoof caller ID numbers. Okay,
so it really just takes a Google to gain the knowledge. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And from there, it looks like this private investigator was just ahead of the curve. He started doing it back in 2005. It all started with Paris Hilton. I don't know if you remember, but back in the day, she somehow managed to accidentally expose all the contents of her mobile phone address book to the world.
I do remember that.
Yeah, and that was basically this hack. Somebody pretended to dial in from her number, and the phone didn't have a pin on it, and just handed over all the details. And you could see who were on her favourites list and who she called regularly and all this kind of thing. Well, it's exactly the same thing. Well, and I guess it's been around since then.
No one actually phones my number anyway, so I've really got nothing to hide. But is this still possible now?
Well, that's the question. And 2005, we had some form of impunity to investigate this kind of thing as journalists because there were no laws at all governing what we now think of as cyber crimes like this. And these days, of course, it is quite illegal to look at somebody else's details. I believe it would probably be accessing a computer system without authorization. You can try it on your own phone number, but this was back in 2005. It was predominantly Telecom's old CDMA network that was at fault. Apparently the teenager who did it and was arrested and prosecuted for it said he couldn't do it to Vodafone, and it was before XT or 2 Degrees came along. So, yes, very interesting. He managed to get into the Auckland Mayor's phone book, the PR guy for Telecom, several senior police officers, and the man responsible for looking after the SIS, although it turns out that he didn't bother using his cell phone. He'd given it to his son. Yeah. So, it was really quite a scandal at the time. Yeah. But it's exactly the same thing that's going on now. It seems that these kinds of access issues still do exist around the world today.
So, I mean, you recently left your position there at Vodafone. Were you aware that Vodafone was at all looking at upping security or preventing this from happening?
Well, it was before my time at Vodafone as well, and I certainly asked about it at Vodafone at the time, and they said, no, it can't happen with us because they used a different voicemail platform that wouldn't accept a phone number coming in from outside that phone unless you went through all the hoops. So they already had the security in place.
Well, the hoops is, though, I mean, because I don't know if it's the same 2 degrees. I have a 2 degrees number now, but with my Vodafone number, I used to be able to dial it on a landline. If the phone was off, we'd go to voicemail, and you would press, I think, hash or star.
Yeah, star, hash or something, and then it would ask you for a PIN number.
That's right, and it's only a 4-digit PIN number.
It is. And that's what this PI has been able to do in the UK, is basically guess a lot of the PIN numbers. Because, as we know, people aren't too good with PIN numbers and tend to just put
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4 or 1968 or something foolish like that. So he's apparently got a large number, thousands of phone numbers, and he's been slowly working his way through trying to work out the PIN numbers for each one. A little bit of social engineering.
Interesting.
Really quite remarkable. So if you do have a PIN number on anything, I'm never an advocate for changing things constantly, but make it something that's not guessable. 1, 2, 3, 4 or 4 zeros is, it's a little bit old school. Time to upgrade.
1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, let's stay with telephony. The marriage this week of Facebook and Skype.
That's right. Isn't that interesting? So hot on the heels of Google coming out with Google Plus, with video calling straight from basically your address book, more or less. Skype and Facebook have teamed up via the auspices of Microsoft, I would suggest. So it's kind of a three-way tie, because Microsoft, of course, is in the throes of spending $8 billion buying Facebook, buying Skype, I should say.
Yeah.
It also has shares in Facebook, almost 2% of Facebook. So I can see some kind of giant mash-up synergy thing going on here. And given that Apple has just decided that Twitter is its social media platform of choice and begun integrating Twitter into the iPhone operating system, I see this as quite an interesting counter to that, which, will no doubt cause quite a bit of concern around the world.
But from a user's perspective, this is kind of an extension of the last time we talked about the fact that younger people probably aren't using the local loop to call their friends down the road.
Right.
Now something like this makes it even more simple. You see them on Facebook. You can see that they're available and live.
Yep. So you push the button.
Push the button, and suddenly you're talking.
And there you are, and it's video call, and away you go. And that really is the future. If you combine that, of course, with the moves from the TV makers like Samsung to integrate Facebook into the hardware of the television itself, and build in a camera. And, of course, Microsoft, as we know, has the Microsoft Xbox Kinect, which is basically a very high-resolution, very smart video camera. Suddenly you're talking about people making phone calls via video from their televisions, bypassing local calling, and having an address book on your television. Oh, it's a whole new ballgame.
Interesting to note that this Skype inside Facebook thing isn't a group video calling service, because that is still a premium service.
That's right.
With Skype. However,
they'll
over
charge
on
a bit extra for that.
Google Plus with their Hangout, that's free.
It's all there already.
Yeah.
Yes. And don't underestimate Google in this, of course, because they've had a couple of cracks at social media. We waved goodbye to the wave, but this one does look a lot stickier, and all of the reviews I've seen so far have been really quite positive. It's really quite.
Are you in there yet?
I'm not. No, I have no friends. Oh. So nobody's sent me an invite, but it's just as well, because I tend to blunder around and not know what I'm doing, and then sit on things.
Yeah. You don't know anything about this technology stuff.
No, it just gets in the way, really.
All right.
But, it's good to see them all out there trying these things, and fascinating the way it's changed so rapidly in the last few years. Who would have thought Microsoft would be the world's biggest phone company?
Indeed.
But there it is.
It is a turn of events.
It is.
Thanks, Paul.
Quite bizarre. Thanks.
Well, we'll see you on Twitter, because that's where he does hang out, twitter.com/